Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is in trouble. I think what is so disappointing is that after 44 years, the country is sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss. And yet, those who have got absolute power don't even say it. They're so busy celebrating failure. And by virtue of them having absolute power, it makes the rest of us stand by helpless, wringing our fingers as the country sinks. There are, of course, arguments to be made here that we are not as helpless as we want to believe we are. I believe the opposition had the opportunity to end this Zanu PF dictatorship, but alas, they've taken their eyes off the ball. And we, the people, have not followed what has been going on. And so the country continues to drift deeper and deeper into the abyss. And to be quite honest, nobody seems to have any idea what to do. This was a speech given by Robert Mugabe in 1980 when the country gained its independence. I would like to compare and contrast it with a speech that was given this year by Emerson Mnangagwa, the one who is exercising absolute power.
Today you have become a friend and ally with the same national interest, loyalty, rights and duties as myself. If yesterday you hated me, today you cannot avoid the love that binds you to me and me to you. Is it not folly, therefore, that in these circumstances, anybody should seek to revive the wounds and grievances of the past?
Well, this is where we are. Whatever we did to avoid the
shanda urye kasingadi kushanda usadya. Verenga Genesis 3 verse 19. Zvanzi shanda uchadya cheziya rinobva kumeso kwako. Paunenge uchiri pamusoro penyika usati wadzokera kuvhukwa wakabva shanda. Kushanda kwacho unenge uchishanda.
Here is the man with the absolute power. Last year, Emerson Mnangagwa blatantly rigged the elections. The Zanu PF regime was not elected by the people of Zimbabwe. The regional body, the continental body, and even Zimbabwe's own Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission election observers condemned last year's election as a farce. So Mnangagwa was able to blatantly rig the election and impose. And now he's standing around and saying that the people must work. Here is a regime that believes that they have got the divine right to rule the country. And they've ruled it in a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical way. The country is in a serious mess. And yet they continue to impose that tyrannical will on the people. I believe the elections were free, fair, and credible. The people would have rejected Zanu PF. After 44 years, the people have had enough. But if you've got a regime that is able to blatantly rig the elections, what can you do? But that is where I was saying that we are not as helpless as we think. The opposition, the MDC, had the opportunity to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. This is something that most people have failed to understand. The people of Zimbabwe have risked livelihoods, limbs, and thousands have died in the last 23 years to elect the opposition into power. In a healthy and democratic nation like the UK, the US, and so forth, you have got a ruling party. And the ruling party, the party in government, its primary task is to govern. Then you've got the opposition. And the primary purpose of the opposition is to hold the party in government to account. That is what as it should be. They are not there to rule. They hold the party who is in power to account. In the case of Zimbabwe, the people for the last 23 years have elected the opposition, and their primary purpose has been to implement the democratic reforms to make sure that elections are free, fair, and credible. Some people have argued that, or how could they have implemented those reforms when they are not in power? Well, they had the opportunity. They were in power during the GNU, the Government of National Unity. That is what that GNU stands for, Government of National Unity. It wasn't Zanu PF government. It wasn't an MDC government. It was a combined. And the global political agreement that was hammered out in 2008, that gave rise to the GNU. That agreement was that the Government of National Unity should implement democratic reforms to stop the blatant cheating that had happened in 2008 and the wanton violence that followed that year during the runoff. SADC, the AU, had done Zimbabwe a great favor by refusing to give political legitimacy to Zanu PF following the 2008 elections. Zanu PF was forced into signing this global political agreement and to form this GNU. The opposition leaders had the opportunity to implement those reforms. SADC was the guarantor of the global political agreement. Some people have argued that Zanu PF was never going to allow any reforms to be implemented. No one would dispute that. It's to be expected. But those people have got also to acknowledge that Zanu PF would have never agreed to the global political agreement. But they had no choice. They were forced. When SADC, the AU, refused to recognize Robert Mugabe and the Zanu PF regime, denied them political legitimacy, they were forced into the GNU. And having signed it, it is not beyond Robert Mugabe to have also refused to sign any reforms. That is true. But what you've got to understand and what you've got to work on is the facts on the ground. Did the opposition implement any reform? The answer is no, they did not. The opposition never submitted one single reform proposal during the 5 years of the GNU. Not one. We have got to deal with the facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground is the opposition, MDC, CCC, sold out on reforms. And ever since the failed GNU, the MDC, CCC guys have participated in flawed elections, knowing fully well that they are flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. And yet they've continued to participate because they also knew that Zanu PF was giving away a few gravy train seats, and that they found irresistible. Zimbabwe's political and economic mess is not beyond us, the ordinary Zimbabweans, to solve. The only problem we have here is that we haven't taken the trouble to understand what is it we can do. And this is what makes it so tragic. So we have got the ruling party that is enjoying absolute power. And as we can see from Mnangagwa there, he absolutely has no idea what to do. When he took over power from Robert Mugabe in 2017, he promised to hold free, fair, and credible elections. He had no intention of doing that. He promised to stamp out corruption. He has become the godfather of corruption. Zimbabwe's resources are now a curse to the nation because the blatant wholesale looting of the country's resources is what is bankrolling Zanu PF to stay in power. The beneficiaries of the looting, the Chinese, the gold mafia, are the ones who are bankrolling Zanu PF to stay in power. And the regime has been using the money to corrupt and capture state institutions like the police, the army, the judiciary, election officials, you name it, traditional leaders. And they've also been corrupting the opposition. I said it on this platform, and I'll say it again. MDC/CCC, particularly post the GNU of 2008 to 2018, have become nothing more than Zanu PF Team B. They've been participating in these elections. knowing fully well that the elections are flawed, knowing fully well that by participating they're giving Zanu PF legitimacy. In other words, they've been playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have political legitimacy. And what have they got in return? A few gravy train seats. So the only change we can expect then is from the ordinary people. And alas, the ordinary people themselves have failed to read the reality on the ground. Millions of people participated in last year's elections. Even after being warned that by participating you're giving Zanu PF legitimacy, they still participated because they believed Chamisa when Chamisa told them that Triple C was going to win big because he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. Of course, that was nonsense. How could he have plugged the loopholes when he did not even get a verified voters roll? When Mnangagwa was boasting publicly that he has got Zanu PF operatives and traditional leaders well organized so that you will have the traditional leader in the front, the ordinary villagers behind him, and behind them, the Zanu PF operatives, frog marching the row of voters to the polling stations. He boasted that the party will know who voted and how they voted. And it is clear, I mean, it's self-evident. This is why the regime has increased the number of polling stations, so much so that they are at maximum 500 people polling station. And you can only vote at one polling station only. And they have their own party operatives with a register of people who have come to vote. And from that, they can tell who is a Zanu PF supporter. And knowing the result, for the sake of argument, if 300 people voted, they've got the names of those 300. The party operatives can easily say if half of them voted for Zanu PF, the other half for the opposition, they'll be able to identify with a fair degree of accuracy the 150 who voted for Zanu PF. And then the other 150 will be targeted for punishment. And so the ordinary voters, particularly in the rural areas, knew that if they did not vote for Zanu PF, they would be in trouble. SADC, the AU, even our own Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission condemned the election. That's a farce. But what happened? Our friends, Triple C, Chamisa and company, still took up the allocated or the few gravy train seats that they'd won. And by so doing, endorsing that the elections were okay. Indeed, leaders like Tendai Biti justified Triple C leaders taking up their gravy train seats on the grounds that these were liberated zones. Triple C won in liberated zones. In other words, the elections in those areas where Triple C won were free, fair, and credible. Of course, that was nonsense. If you didn't have the verified voters roll, that applied to everybody. There was no verified voters roll in urban centers. Zanu PF needs those few seats opposition to participate and win those seats to give the appearance that this process was a democratic process. And that is exactly what Triple C did. Zimbabwe is sinking. And the tragedy is those who have got absolute power, our friend Dame Nangagwa, has not the foggiest idea what to do. All he is determined to do is hang on to power. That's all he cares about. And those the nation had entrusted the task of making sure we restore the people's right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country have since sold out. They found it much easier to cooperate with Zanu PF for a share of the spoils of power. And the third group, the majority, the ordinary people. Alas, even after 23 years of MDC Triple C, the people still haven't realized that the primary purpose of MDC was to implement the reforms. And so many of them continue to be blindly faithful to Triple C. If Triple C had failed to implement even one token reform in 23 years, including the 5 years in the GNU, what hope is there that they will implement reforms now? None. So we are hurtling towards 2028, and we can be rest assured that our friends in the opposition will participate in those elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. And we are back to where we are. Zimbabwe is a hopeless situation because all the three main stakeholders in this have no idea what to do. Those with this absolute power to rig elections, to stay in power because they think they've got the divine right to rule the country, plundering from pillar to post. And they've become the godfathers of corruption. And they've been using a lot of the looted wealth to buy off, to corrupt the rest of society, including state institutions and the opposition. The opposition have become Zanu PF Team B, playing politics to make sure that Zanu PF wins the election and there's legitimacy. And the ordinary people have no idea what the opposition's purpose is, and therefore then continues to believe that the opposition is still fighting in their corner, when in reality the opposition has given up on reforms, and now they're fighting for the share of the spoils of power. It is tragic. It really is tragic. that here is a nation, a failed state, all because we failed to govern ourselves. Sad. Thank you very much for listening and have a good day. If I close, I'll just show a comment from somebody here. I'm saying, seems to be true. I wish people of Zimbabwe would follow your thought. Thank you very much. Yes, it is a pity. Well, it is tragic. After 44 years, we still have we can't even hold free, fair, and credible elections. I think that is really, truly tragic. We can't figure out what it is we require to ensure that we've got free, fair, and credible elections, even this day and age. You despair. Thank you very much for listening and have a good day.